Mr. Bison flips!
Mr. Bison flips! Mr. Bison flips! Mr. Bison flips!
So welcome to this little exploration of Hamlet's first soliloquy, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt." In our New Cambridge edition, it appears on page 100, in Act 1, Scene 2, line 129 to 158. This will be a fairly rapid walkthrough of the speech, just stopping at some of the central parts, allowing you to explore some aspects of it on your own. So we can see a few elements of Hamlet's personality coming through in this speech. We can see the passion that he feels both for, both his passion about life and the role of man, but also how passionate he is about the loss of his father and the remarriage of his mother. We see the typical Renaissance man coming through, both in terms of his philosophy, but also in terms of the type of imagery he uses, the allusions to classical periods, etc. Initially, there's a contemplation of suicide, but primarily we're dealing with a frustration over the mother's hurried remarriage and the quality of the husband that she has picked for herself. Some of the techniques that you want to look out for in the soliloquy, I've highlighted some of them, I'll talk about some of them, but there's a lot of classical allusions. There's use of hyperbole, extended metaphors, accumulation of in long lists, there's juxtaposition and apostrophe. So we start the soliloquy with an exclamation to show straight away the emotion, the frustration that Hamlet is feeling about the conversation, the exchange that he's just had with his mother at Claudius, etc. And the frustration of the remarriage and the life that he's now stuck with. So he's just expressing a desire to no longer be part of this world and this place, desiring his flesh to melt in this rather gruesome fashion, thaw and then resolve itself into a dew. So it goes from a solid state to a liquid state into a mist that will disappear. He then progresses from there to a desire of self-slaughter, and he wishes that the Everlasting had not fixed his canon, his law against self-slaughter, so he could go ahead with such a thing. And would then get that hyperbolic accumulation of what the world looks like to him in his current state. He describes the world as weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable. All the uses of the world seem those things to him. We see further emotional exclamation in line 134, 135 maybe, when he says, "Fie, fie on it, ah, fie, 'tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely." So not only does the state of Denmark or Claudius or whatever aspect of life he is now frustrated with have these features, but it's growing to seed and it's spreading. And we'll see this kind of disease and weeds type imagery coming through the play as a whole. This is the first time we encounter some of that. The next sentence kind of signals transition into more of a retrospection. He's more moving into almost an anecdotal retelling. That it should come to this, but 2 months dead. And then the hyphen kind of stops the thinking, and he qualifies that thinking, nay, not so much not to, i.e. since his father passed away and his mother got married. He then proceeds to use some classical allusions to compare his father to Claudius. The first comparison he does, the first juxtaposition between the two, is Hyperion, the god of the sun, to a satyr. Now, I know Mr. Tumnus is a faun, but you get the idea. Similar kind of creature, someone who's associated with Dionysus and his wild parties, mischief, bawdy, kind of rude jokes, and nothing really of substance. Whereas obviously the sun god, Hyperion or Helios, is the ultimate power symbol. To contrast that powerful image of his father, he then shows the care that the father is taking, where he's saying that he would not beteem the winds of heaven to visit her face too roughly. So he would get between the wild winds and his mother's or Gertrude's face, so that the face wouldn't get affected. So we see the caring and tenderness, protective aspect of the father. The passion then increases further when he exclaims, "Heaven and earth must I remember." why she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on, indicating that strong attachment she had with him. And obviously the rhetorical question again heightens that emotion. Really, how could she possibly move on after the way she seemed addicted to her father, and the more she was with him, the more she wanted to be with him. And yet, within a month, let me not think on it, that frustration that he's feeling. And we move on to the apostrophe, personification, if you like, of frailty. Their name is woman. Now the time frame is further reduced. It's now become a little month, or ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body. So the shoes that she wore for the funeral are still fresh and new, as she uses them to remarry his brother Claudius. Like Niobe, all tears, why she, e'en she, oh God, a beast, that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer. So we're moving on from classically the demigod Niobe, and the mourning that she felt after the loss of her kids, and the petrification that happened when she became a rock with a waterfall from all the tears. So that's how much she mourned when she lost her husband. But then, even worse than a beast that has no reason whatsoever, she moved on quickly and married with my uncle. An uncle that Hamlet perceives as being far lesser than his father. And he describes Claudius as my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. Right. So Hamlet, the thinker, passive, contemplative, phlegmatic; Hercules, the great hero, the slayer, the powerful giant alpha male, and how different they are. And that's how different Claudius is to his father, Hamlet Senior. And then we continue to decrease the time that's passed since the wedding, between the funeral and the wedding. Within a month, ere yet the salt of most unrighteous tears had left the flushing of her golden eyes. So we first get a month, and then we move on to actually the tears still clinging to her eyelids as she's mourning the father. And yet she married, oh, with most wicked speed to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheet. And we'll see this perception of incest and of sheets and beds being soiled coming through in later parts of the image of the play as well. Hamlet then concludes the speech by essentially stating his action, which is to do nothing at this point. It's going to break his heart, but he must hold his tongue, because at this point there's nothing he can do. He's been told by his uncle and his mother to stop mourning, stop voicing his sadness, and instead try to move on. The speech, in a sense, feels unresolved, ends a bit abruptly, doesn't have the usual couplet to conclude it, doesn't feel to have that kind of punch, or doesn't really have a sense of resolve either, other than I will do nothing at this point. Could be partly because of the entry of Horatio, Marcellus, and Bernardo when they come in to report the seeing of the ghost. But it does have a slightly less complete ending than the other soliloquies. I think the last thing that's worth mentioning in this speech is the continual exaggeration of time, I think, to show Hamlet's frustration with how quickly his mother forgot about his father. So initially it's but 2 months dead, nay, not so much not 2, and then it's within a month, and then it's a little month, and then it's ere those shoes were old, ere the salt had left her eyes, oh, with most wicked speed. She goes on to incestuous sheets. So it's that progression of shorter and shorter time span between the funeral of the father and the marriage to his brother. Hope that gives you a bit of an overview of that speech. Any questions, then bring them to me in class.